Welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Nightsaber Z42, and this is Character Vault, where I go through the whole process of creating a character from start to finish using various games. And today, we are going to be taking a look at Wicked Ones, a game where you take control of basically the bad guys. The only thing you're going to need here is the book, one of the character sheets, and a pencil. So, let's dive right on in and let's see what is involved in this character creation process. Now, character creation actually begins on page 86 after all of the rules, and I actually kind of like that. I like having the rules up front so that way I know what everything is afterwards. So the first part of the chapter, they're just kind of explaining, picking a monster race and like what language they can speak and what they can understand and things like that, and what are abilities, like your primal abilities. And then we actually get the whole process. So there are actually 8 different steps to creating a character. So step 1, we're going to choose a monster race. We'll choose a calling, which is basically like your class. We'll choose a calling ability. We'll choose the actions that we're good at, which are like your skills. We'll choose a dark impulse, choose our Revelry, choose gear supply and gear defense, and then we'll pick a vile friend or some sort of a contact that we can use to gain information or certain items and stuff like that. So 8 different steps, and then we are all finished. And I do like how they have separated the whole process out into these steps, and they even give you the page numbers for some of the steps, which is always a bonus because you're going to be going back and forth in this book quite a bit. Anyways, let's take a look at the character sheet. Now, I have with me only one of the 9 different character sheets. Now, each of the character sheets reflect each of the different callings, and as you can tell, I picked Shaman, so you can probably tell what class I'm going to be choosing. But over on the left side, you're going to have things like your name, your race, your dark impulse, and revelry. Things like gear, your stress is located here, as well as how to make resistance rolls, any downtime projects, your dungeon duties, any gold that you have. But then over on the right side, you're going to have your calling abilities, and that's very specific to the calling that you choose. So for each of the different callings, this section is going to be different, which it's really not necessary, but at the same time, it's also kind of cool that they did this. It just means that there's 9 different character sheets that you can choose from, but all the information is here. You don't actually have to write it down. So, anyways, we're going to get started with our name. And for this one, I have chosen the name Gurrk with 2 R's. Other than that, we will get started with step number 1, which is choosing a monster race. By default, there are 6 monster races recommended in this book. We have Bugbear, Demon, Goblin, Kobold, Orc, and the Slissic, which are like snake people. Or you can use your own idea. So maybe you want to pull something from the Monsters Manual or any of the Dungeons & Dragons supplements. You can definitely do that, and there are some tips and tricks on how to do that later on in this book. In addition to that, there are also 4 different advanced races, and they are called primal monsters. So for your primal monsters, we have the Brain Eater, which is basically like a Mind Flayer, a Doom Seeker, Face Stealer, and then the Goldmonger, which is just like a dragon. So those are only recommended for advanced players because they function quite a bit different than normal monsters. So for our character Gurrk, we are going to choose Goblin as our race. Nice little green goblin. Anyways, let us move on to choosing our calling. So as I've stated before, a calling is essentially your class, and there are 9 to choose from this time around. And they actually begin on page number 94. So first off, we have the Brute, who are powerful and intimidating brawlers, your melee type characters. You have the Conniver, who are manipulative and controlling masterminds. You have the Crafters, clever and curious tinkerers. Hunters, who are ruthless and tenacious trackers. Marauders, who are cunning and fearless warriors. Shadows, who are sneaky and elusive rogues. Shamans, who are terrifying and vengeful witches. Warlocks, who are daring and ambitious mages. And last but not least, we have the Zealot, who is fervent and a mystical believer. Each one has their own unique abilities, and there are 7 abilities to choose from, which we'll talk about here in just a second. For now, we are actually going to choose Shaman as our calling. And if you couldn't tell, based on the character sheet, that is exactly what we are doing. We're going to become a Shaman. So each calling has 1 core ability and 7 different calling abilities to choose from. The Shaman begins with Witchcraft. You have mastered a magical path, so choose one. Blood Reading, Soothsaying, Spirit Calling, Stormstrike, or Wild Heart. You can spend stress to invoke Tier 2 and Tier 3 spells of your path. Those are the 5 different Witchcraft paths that we can choose from, and those paths are spelled out for you on page 144. So let's take a quick look at that. So we have Blood Reading, the pulse of life. Bodies are nothing more than the blood coursing through their veins, and you know blood well. You can sense it, read it, control it, and use it to push people past their limits, seal wounds closed, or force its body to do terrible things. When blood reading spells fail, you might invigorate your target, send them into a blood-boiling rage, or harm yourself instead. Then there's Soothsaying. You can cast your sight far and wide, moving your senses forward and backwards through time. You play with alternative versions of the future and delve into events in the past, looking to unlock valuable secrets. When Soothsaying spells fail, you might get bad information, curse yourself by toying with future timelines, or make the one who you were viewing aware of your presence. And we have Spirit Calling, the world beyond. The spirits of the dead linger, waiting to take care of unfinished business. They have their own motivations, but when you talk, they listen. They're a good source of information, but only know what they've seen. When Spirit Calling spells fail, you might attract unwanted attention from dangerous spirits, scare friendly spirits away, or slip into the spirit realm yourself. Next, we have Stormstrike, the storm's fury. The storm is the ultimate power of nature, wreaking havoc and destruction without reserve. You understand the ebbs and flows of the storm, harnessing it for your own purposes. You control clouds, wind, rain, hail, and lightning. When Stormstrike spells fail, you might cause favorable weather conditions for your enemies, strike your allies, or lose control of the raging storm. And then we have Wild Heart, the brutality of nature. The power of nature is immense, but you hold sway over it. The dark beasts and creepy crawlers of the world obey your commands. Gnarled roots and thorny vines move when you beckon. Even the cold soil and rushing waters answer your calls. When Wild Heart spells fail, you might lose nature's trust for a while, slip into a temporary feral state, or nature might cause unintended trouble. We are actually going to be choosing the Stormstrike, Storm's Fury. So on our character sheet, we're definitely going to bubble in Witchcraft because we automatically learn that. And I don't believe there's any place to write down Stormstrike. So instead, we're just going to go ahead and circle it on our character sheet right there. So in addition to our main core ability, we also have access to 7 shaman abilities. And this is from Beast Form, Bonded Spirit, Spirit Whispers, Terror, Weaving, Wild Bruise, and Wrath. And we are actually going to take Wrath. Your desire for payback fuels your witchcraft. When you cast a spell, immediately after a resistance roll, you take plus 1d and it costs no stress to cast. So on our character sheet, we're going to go ahead and bubble that in. And that's all that really we have to do for our abilities. We get our main core ability, and then we get to choose one of our shaman abilities. Now, as we gain experience, we can buy more abilities later on. For now, let's choose our actions. A list of all of the actions are located on page 28, so let's quickly turn back there and we can see. So our actions are separated into 3 different abilities or attributes. So we have brains, muscles, and guts as our 3 main attributes. For brains, we have things like scan. You perceptively read situations or search for information. We have tinker. You cleverly fiddle with a device, mechanism, or concoction. And we have trick. You slyly deceive, confuse, or manipulate somebody. For muscles, we have things like finesse. You precisely take aim, maneuver, or use tools. Or skulk. You sneakily move unnoticed or launch a surprise attack. Then we have things like smash. You powerfully assault someone or something. And then for guts, we have things like banter. You affably get people to help you because they like you. Invoke. You magically interact with dark mystical forces. Or threaten. You forcefully compel someone to obey or fear you. Now, when we actually choose our actions, we can put 3 dots for any one skill, or I guess action. We can put 2 dots on any 2 actions, and then we can put 1 dot for any 2 actions. So obviously the more dots you have in a skill, the better you are at doing such things. For now, for Gurrk, we're going to put 3 dots in Invoke, since that's our main spellcasting ability, and I think we're going to be, flinging spells left and right with Gurrk. For our 2 dots, we're going to put 2 dots for Scan. He's a little perceptive. And Skulk. He likes to sneak around a little bit. He doesn't want to be noticed because that just means the bad people are going to hurt him. And then for our 1 dot actions, we're going to put 1 dot in Trick and Threaten. He's a little guy and he's got a lot to prove. So he's going to be trying to trick and threaten people. Or trick people first and foremost, but when that fails, he's going to try to threaten by probably kicking up a tantrum. Anyways, that's all there is for actions. Just put 3 points into 1 skill, 2 points into 2 skills, and then 1 point into 2 skills. Next, we get to choose a dark impulse. This is best described as something that pulls at your character's attention. There are 8 recommended right here in the book, from big mouth, cruel, deranged, fickle, obsessed, paranoid, reckless, and vengeful. And of course, you can always create your own at your GM's discretion. You just got to discuss it. This is a very narrative type game, so everything is basically open to interpretation. Given the fact that we have Wrath as our shaman ability, I think it only makes sense for Gurrk to take Vengeful. So on our character sheet, we're going to select Vengeful, and that will be the end of it. So we also gain a Dark Heart when we make our choice. And I don't see a spot. Oh, here we go. Dark Heart. So we'll go ahead and fill that in right there. Dark Hearts are expendable resources within our game. And you can gain them by completing your impulses, by giving into your impulses and stuff like that. Next, we get to choose a Revelry. Revelry is basically how your character likes to blow off steam, and the book has 6 recommendations from craving, drinking, gambling, occult, violence, and worship. And I think for Gurrk, since he's a small guy, the bigger creatures like to, tease him and stuff like that. I think it only makes sense that he has a craving for food. So for our Revelry, we will write craving, and then I'm going to specify food, because there are lots of different types of cravings that you can have, like from drug addiction or other things that, unsavory characters might indulge in. For now, we're just going to write craving, and that will be the end of it. Next, we get to choose our gear. So the gear supply and gear defense is explained on page 70. But for character creation, we get to choose 4 items as our gear, the things that we always carry on ourselves, and decide our gear defense. Then we're going to choose another 2 items that you begin with in your supply. Each calling has a list of example items to give you some ideas One of the items you choose can be a valuable item, an item with an edge, or a tier 1 contraption magic item, or 3 doses of a potion or concoction. You can also take 1 gold instead of this. So if we go over to the shaman calling, there are some items here that are just some examples, like spirit mask, bone mace, thorn amulet, augury bones, jar of fireflies, voodoo mask, spiked club, bag of snakes, smoking pipe, gnarled staff, tooth necklace, and feathered headdress. And each of the different callings have different items, that are just flavorful examples. As already stated in the character creation section, gear covers the items that we always have on us and to make regular use of. They help define your character's look and provide you with a defense based on your utility. You can carry 4 items as gear. Now, for our gear, we're going to have, we're going to have a jar of stormflies, which are just like fireflies, only they are blue. We're also going to have things like wooden armor, just like a wooden plank that he wears like across his chest. And we're also going to have a voodoo mask. For our last piece of gear, we're going to take like a staff that's in the shape of a branch. So let's put branch staff. And this is kind of what he uses for casting his storm spells and stuff like that. And for our supplies, we'll take 2 boxes. And I was thinking of things like rope, and maybe like snakes, like a bag of snakes. I think that would be pretty cool to have. Heck, maybe the rope could be the snakes. So we also have some defenses here, and we're going to go ahead and list our wooden armor as one of our defenses. And we're also going to list the branch staff as one of our defenses as well. So we have 2 items that we can use. And the book explains that we can combine certain gears for 1 piece of defense. But for now, I think the wooden armor and the branch staff would do in terms of defense. And it's all basically a narrative. So whenever you want to defend, you say that maybe the sword strikes my wooden armor, thus cracking it, which means you've used up that defense. And you'll have to find another one. That's all there is for gear, supply, and defense. The last step is to pick a vile friend. The last step in character creation is to create a vile friend. This is kind of like an ally we can go to for aid or to seek information in an area. We can even buy items from them from time to time. So, once your dungeon is established, you're going to choose a monster in the region you've made friends with during the initial dungeon setup montage. This vile friend gives you an easy way to connect to the world outside of your dungeons. They're more or less friendly towards you and can be paid for help, items, information, and so on. So, we haven't gone through the whole dungeon creation thing just quite yet, but I still have something in mind. I'm thinking that we're going to have like maybe an old sorcerer who committed some foul deed in the area, and he's kind of been banished, or maybe he's wanted. And he usually stays hidden in his little tower or whatever. Or maybe even in some of the shady parts of the area, or maybe in town or something like that. But he does know where to get some magical resources, or we can go to get such items. And so I'm going to put down an old sorcerer as our vile friend. And with that, our character creation is complete. Now, of course, when we go through the whole dungeon creation process, we can, of course, fill out our dungeon duties and our minions and things like that. Some of the things like the project clocks are just things that happen during the game. We don't have any XP just quite yet, so those are going to be blank. But there is a nice handy dandy area to write down some notes. I do like that they kind of list some weird things like what are some of the words that we know in basic. And there's also a list of actions here that we know how to do. Things like assist, or we can go hard, team up, dark bargain, or dark heart. Those are explained here. So you don't really need access to the book, I would say. You can kind of make use of all of the actions with just the character sheet, which is always a good thing, because this book it has you go back and forth quite a bit, which can be very daunting for, new players or people who are new to tabletop RPGs. Anyways, that is Gurrk in a nutshell. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support the series, and subscribe if you would like to see more. I will see you guys in the next video.